declaration of interest by the members? Seeing none. Item 3, confirmation of minutes. 3.1, light rail subcommittee minutes 4 from May 26, 2023. Is that carried? Carried. First order of business and the major order of business today is a significant update on and a sizable update on the steps that are being undertaken to prepare for LRT service in the fall of this year. We have had over the last few months very technical updates on the project itself and the construction, but there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes in terms of preparing so that our riders are welcomed and the city's needs are integrated with the service once we go live. So that is the intent today. We are in the council chambers today. It's a small subcommittee, so I don't like being in here, but we've got, as you can see from the roster in front of us today, a very large group of people who are working on various fronts to again prepare for the service coming online. And I think there'll be quite a bit of back and forth there. So we thought it might be a bit more practical to have it set up in here. It is hot in the room. I don't think it's because of the number of people here. I think the air conditioning gets turned off on the weekends. So that's coming back online, and it'll be hopefully a little bit more comfortable as time goes by this morning. So with that, Madame René, vous êtes prête? Je vais passer la parole à vous. Merci.
Merci beaucoup, Mr. President. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Chair DeRoche, Vice Chair Curry, and councillors for joining us at today's Light Rail Subcommittee meeting. Today, I'm pleased to share with you an extensive presentation to further build on the information provided at our last Light Rail Subcommittee meeting in May. At that meeting, we did a deep dive presentation into lines 2 and 4, and I promised we would come back with a presentation on the projects our OC Transpo teams are leading to get ready for the opening. And today, I'm delivering on that promise. I'm so pleased to have some of our amazing OC Transpo team members here who have been working tirelessly behind the scenes to prepare for the opening of lines 2 and 4. There are many moving parts and pieces to the puzzle that need to fit together for us to be ready for the launch. It truly is a complex choreography. The goal of today's presentation is to demonstrate the level of coordination and work that is going on behind the scenes at OC Transpo to be ready. It will allow you to see what it takes to plan for the opening of a very complex light rail system on transit. Our hope is that this presentation and overview will give you both confidence and comfort. The ongoing work has been a combined effort from all levels across OC Transpo. And while the entire department management team and I play a role in this work, we are backed by a very competent team of experts. And I believe it is important for you to meet and hear from them today. These team members have been running and facilitating many complex projects in coordination with each other to ensure the success of the launch. I'm excited for them to take center stage today so they can showcase their progress to date. Next slide, please. Today, we will be looking at information on the Rail Operational Readiness Program and the Rail Activation Management Program. This will include information pertaining to staff synchronization, customer-facing projects and priorities such as wayfinding, station design and connectivity, operational preparedness, safety requirements, and next steps. Next slide, please. The team, the backbone of our organization and our greatest asset. I would like to briefly introduce you to the team members who will be presenting to you today. Justin Koreski, Project Manager, Trillium Line Hanover. Matt Peters, Manager of Rail Systems. Dan Richardson, Program Manager of Operational Planning. Katia Sostarik, Senior Transit Planning. Devon Dupuis, Project Manager for Stage 2 Customer Information System. Joël Lemieux, Manager of the Transit Operation Control Center, TOCC. Connie Gleason, Program Manager of Rail Contracts. Caroline Villemer, Section Manager of Field Operations. Paul Trebutat, our Chief Safety Officer. who you know him very well now, Dwayne Duquette, our Deputy Safety Officer, and Ken Gordon, Manager of Transit Training and Development. I'm so proud to present this team. Shortly, they will provide you with an overview of their important work. Next slide, please. Now, I would like to take this opportunity to quickly recap what was presented at the last Light Rail Subcommittee meeting on May 26th. At that meeting, we discussed changes to our bus network that will accompany the launch of lines 2 and 4, including air full service. Our oversight process to ensure the city is meeting its regulatory requirements, the delivery of emergency response training, how we are managing project risk, and our plan to keep council informed during trial running. Today, our presentation will build upon these points and will speak to the intricacies and interrelation of the ongoing construction, testing and commissioning works, and the OC operational preparations to get ready for the public opening. Next slide, please. Today's presentation is part of our ongoing commitment of transparency. We are dedicated to providing council and the public with update and factual information and data. This commitment to transparency helps to ensure that we are being accountable in our efforts to deliver safe, clean, dependable, and accessible public transit services. We are working toward the completion of the city's public inquiry action plan, which includes our commitment to provide regular updates to the Light Rail Subcommittee and the Transit Commission on Ottawa's LRT system. In addition to formal meetings, we continue to engage regularly with council, the public, and our various stakeholders. We will also provide daily reporting to council during the trial running of stage 2. In September, we will be providing an update on our progress for both the east and west expansions of O-Train Line 1. Next slide, please. I'm now pleased to pass things over to Jason Karewski, our Program Manager for Trillium Line Hanover, who will be providing you with an in-depth overview of the Rail Operational Readiness Program and the Rail Activation Management Program. Merci beaucoup. Over to you, Justin.
Merci, Renee. Good morning. My name is Justin Karewski. I'm the Program Manager for the Trillium Line Handover. I'm responsible for the effective transition from construction to operations for the Trillium Line. In order to undertake this task, our team at the Transportation Services Department have developed the Rail Operational Readiness Program, ROAR, and the Rail Activation Management Program, RAMP, to which I will speak about this morning. Next slide, please. Le Programme de préparation opérationnelle des chemins de fer, connu sous le nom de ROAR, comprend 17 projets différents.
The Rail Operation Readiness Program includes 17 phases. These projects go from systems to directions and space development, training, and much more. As you can see on the slide, and as you will hear during the presentation, the team of Transportation Department are working diligently on all the organizational program to make sure that we are ready to go from construction to operation of phase 2 of the expansion of the rail network.
The ROAR program, or the Rail Operational Readiness Program, and the Rail Activation Management Program will manage the delivery of stage 2. The ROAR program specifically will manage and schedule the activities and projects required to prepare the Transportation Services Department to operate lines 2 and 4. The RAMP program will manage the meeting structure and reporting of milestones required for each stage up to the launch of lines 2 and 4. Next slide, please. The ROAR program was created to develop and implement strategic projects and activities that enable the Transportation Services Department to deliver an expanded and integrated multimodal transit service, to which you will hear more about from my colleagues today. Using a structured project management approach, ROAR supports the implementation of business and service delivery models that ensure a seamless and positive end-to-end customer journey. Next slide, please. RAMP is the mechanism for tracking and reporting on all deliverables required to ensure operational readiness. It integrates all the ROAR elements and the projects, plus all the elements of construction, testing, commissioning vehicles that Transit Next and the rail construction program are delivering on into one tracking scorecard. We meet on a varying frequency as we get closer to the public launch of lines 2 and 4 with DLT to address escalated issues and risks for mitigation. We're ensuring a seamless incorporation of the Trillium Line extension into Ottawa's multimodal transit system. And lastly, ensuring the effective transition from construction to operations. Next slide. This is the RAMP scorecard, the dashboard overview of all the elements within RAMP that we track. The RAMP scorecard provides an overview of the status of the system as a whole. As mentioned, it integrates every element into one overall report to enable the detailed view into the status that any one element is at. It tracks progress, issues, risks, identifies mitigations, and allows senior management to make decisions based on the most accurate and current information available. The 5 reporting categories are broken down into many subcategories, to which are broken down into system elements. For instance, the vehicles and fixed components category includes subcategories such as trains, station construction, bridges, and track, among others. Whereas the operations and maintenance readiness category includes subcategories such as regulatory approvals, operating plans and procedures, training, staffing, as well as safety and security certification, among others. It gets as granular as tracking how many DROs have been onboarded to date and when the staffing competitions close. This scorecard report includes a no-go list that will ensure that when we start operations, it will be in a functional, safe, and secure manner. Thank you. Next, I am pleased to introduce Matt Peters, Manager of Rail Systems.
Thank you, Justin. Merci au président et aux membres du comité. Je m'appelle Matt
Thank
Peters.
you to the president, members of the committee. I am the manager of the rail systems.
On the screen is a list of items that I will provide a brief update on, and just some of the items that we discussed with our maintainer as part of a bi-weekly meetings to prepare for the operation and maintenance of the Trillium Line. Next slide, please. Specialized tools and equipment. As part of the maintenance preparedness, our maintainer requires specialty tools and equipment to support our operations and maintenance of the rail line. These include signaling equipment, computers with specialized software, and some track equipment. Many of the items are currently being used by the constructor to install and commission the system, and that equipment will be handed over to the maintainer for the maintenance term. At this time, approximately 50% of this is available, and the remaining is being purchased and is currently on track for delivery. Next slide, please. Maintenance equipment. This is a standard maintenance equipment used to maintain a rail line and includes such items as the wheel lathe, overhead cranes, train lifting jacks used to lift the trains in the air for maintenance work, and the train wash. Maintenance personnel and maintenance staffing is trending well, and T-Next are staffing up. They are onboarding former staff that had previously worked on the Trillium Line with some current construction staff. This benefits the project and overall maintenance term, as these staff have experience and knowledge of the vehicles and the overall rail system. Currently on staff are vehicle techs, signal and comm techs, guideway techs, supervisors, and management. Yard control staff are starting to onboard at the end of this month, with others coming from the construction team. Overall spare parts are tracked to ensure the maintainer has the necessary parts to maintain our vehicles and the overall system. At this time, all of the vehicle spare parts and consumables are complete, and the starter vehicles parts are currently on track for delivery this summer. All systems parts are mostly coming from the construction and suppliers and through warranties. T-Next is reviewing all required stock for each element of the system, and they will follow any manufacturer's recommendations for spare parts requirements. Next slide, please. Maintenance of the IT systems. Unlike the Confederation line, where RTG supplied, installed, and maintains the head-end equipment for the different systems, many of the Trillium line head-end systems are supplied and installed through our rail construction team, and then will be maintained by OC Transpo. On the screen is a list of the different systems and equipment that are part of this category. This includes communication system servers, network equipment and switches, software, and all of the associated cabling from Bayview Station back to Belfast Road. The head end is essentially the servers and software for each of the different systems and the computers that the rail controllers use in the Transit Operation Control Center to operate the system. It does not include the field cabling and devices at stations that are connected to each of these systems. This is a responsibility of TNext. Also to note, it does not include the signal and train control system or the tunnel ventilation system. This is being supplied and installed and maintained by TNext. The process is our rail construction team is supplying and installing each of these systems through the Stage 2 project by securing vendors to perform this task. Each system has a warranty that varies in the length of time and the equipment that is covered. Once the systems are fully installed, integrated, and tested, they will be handed over to OC Transpo to maintain. In parallel, we have reviewed each warranty and are working with these vendors to extend the agreements to include corrective and planned maintenance. This includes items such as timelines to replace a defective part under warranty, response times for corrective actions on critical systems, preventative maintenance work, and software updates. As each system is different, they all carry varying requirements and criticality to our operations, so each agreement is specific to that system. Over time, the intent is to have this work performed by full-time staff rather than enter into maintenance agreements over the long term. This will take some time to hire and adequately train staff on these specific head-end systems. Where are we now in the process? We are on track to have all of the maintenance agreements in place later this summer. We are closely working with our partners at procurement, legal, and our city IT security teams throughout this process. Merci pour votre temps et je vais maintenant céder la parole à Dan Richardson.
Thank you for your time. And now I'll give the floor to Dan Richardson.
Thank you very much, Matt.
Merci.
My name is Dan Richardson, and I am the Program Manager of Operational Planning with OC Transpo, and I'm happy to be here today to share with you, excuse me, to share with you the following elements of my project related to the linkages between transit operations, roadway networks, and O-train stations. Bon matin, je m'appelle Dan Richardson et je suis le gestionnaire du programme de planification.
I am the Program Manager Operational Planning at OC Transpo. I'm glad to be here today to share with you the following elements of my projects: transit operation, road network, and train stations.
The goal of this project is to ensure efficient operations within O-train stations, O-train station bus loops, and across the network. To achieve this, the project includes modifications to roadways and signals to ensure the efficient movement of buses. Specifically related to the bus loops, this includes computer simulations, modeling, and live testing to validate operating plans. A key deliverable of this project will be a set of station management plans to assist with the effective ongoing management of the stations. Next slide, please. An important consideration in the implementation of the Stage 2 bus network is transit priority measures. The transit priority measures that support the existing transit network have been developed over a long period of time. So the goal of this project is to review the new routes to ensure that any measures can be implemented on day one to ensure the reliability of the network right away. The example on the slide shows the location of a transit priority measure on Scott Street at Parkdale, which supports regular operations and rail replacement service as part of the Stage 1 bus network. Next slide, please. As part of this project, live testing will be conducted at each of the Stage 2 bus loops, as was done with each of the Stage 1 bus loops. The goal of the live testing is to evaluate the construction and geometry of the bus loops and the circulation of the buses through the stations, as well as the performance of the bus loops under various operating scenarios. These tests will contribute to the development of the station management plans, which will include detailed station layouts, bus circulation details, bus route and platform assignments, and information about passenger pickup and drop-off areas and park and ride facilities. The image here on this slide is taken at Blair Station during the live testing that was completed as part of the preparation for Stage 1 of the O-train. Next slide, please. Another important deliverable of this project will be the coordination of the transition between the existing bus network and the new Stage 2 bus network. Some of these changes may occur prior to the launch of the train, while some will occur along with the launch of the train. Specifically, this project will include a strategic transition plan to ensure that every detail is considered. Specifically for lines 2 and 4, this work will include the implementation of the interim bus network, which will be in place upon the opening of lines 2 and 4. The image on this slide shows an OC Transpo facilities crew in the process of removing a bus stop flag on Albert Street when the transitway service was removed from that corridor. The intent of this project is to coordinate these types of details to make sure that all of the changes happen in the right places at the right times to ensure a seamless transition for customers. Thank you very much, and I will hand it over to Katja.
Merci beaucoup, Dan, et bonjour. Je m'appelle Katja
Good
Sestero.
morning. I am Katja Sosteric, Senior Transit Planner
Thank you, Dan.
for
I'm
the service planning.
Katja Sestero, and I'm the Senior Transit Planner of the Service Planning Branch. Next slide, please. My ROR project focuses on ensuring that station design, construction, and fit out meets our customer and operational needs. The scope includes reviewing all areas of a station, both inside and outside, focusing on customer and staff-facing elements. I work with the core design review team of about 20 staff for other disciplines and elements, and we all contribute to overall station design. The output is assessing stations for overall city acceptance and readiness. Next slide, please. When we talk about assessing station acceptance, we look at verifying transit elements, and there are 3 key items that go into this assessment. The first is conducting site visits throughout construction. The second is verifying the approved design through these site visits. And the third is identifying and resolving open issues as a result of the design verification at these site visits. Next slide, please. The second type of assessment that falls under my ROR project assesses station readiness for our customers and operations. There are a number of items that go into this assessment, and some of these items include the closeout of any open items that we might have identified during our site visits, ensuring that TNEX has provided the provisions for city supplied equipment, ensuring that the stations are ready for our staff familiarization, ensuring that our customer-facing elements have been installed, and that our employee spaces have been fitted out. Merci beaucoup. Thank you. I will now pass it along to my colleague, Devin.
Thank you, Katja. Hello, good morning. My name is Devin Dupuis, a project manager with Service Planning. Bonjour, je m'appelle Devin Dupuis et je suis gestionnaire de projet pour la planification du service. Next slide, please. The Wayfinding project gives us the opportunity to enhance the customer experience as we expand services on line 2 and 4 and later with lines 1 and 3. By leveraging new technologies, improvements to real-time information, and experiences from stage 1, we have emphasized customer communications throughout the design. As customers use these new services, they should feel a consistent, modern, and helpful wayfinding experience as they travel between lines, services, stations, buses, and trains. Next slide, please. Building off of the designs from stage 1, we reviewed some of the best-in-class transit agencies from around the world, including New York, London, Montreal, Metrolinx, Boston, etc., to develop wayfinding solutions and supports for our customers. These include considerations such as transfers from between line 2 and 4 trains at South Keys and Bayview Station, considerations for international travelers using the new line 4 service from the airport, accessibility designs, new layouts of multimodal stations, and many other design considerations. In coordination with the signage provided by TNEX, we are updating signage at key line 2 and 4 transitway stations, including Walkley, South Keys, and Greenboro. Trailblazing signage will lead customers from neighborhoods, shopping malls, airports, and event centers to nearby stations. TNEX is also providing the infrastructure for a modern advertising program in the future, which the city will be tendering as the remaining line 1 and 3 stations open. In the interim, we're installing poster frames to provide OC Transpo content to customers. Next slide, please. One of the most significant improvements to the wayfinding experience will be the new OC Transpo passenger information displays installed throughout stations, including entrances, shelters, bus loops, concourses, and select platforms. These modern digital displays will provide real-time information to customers when and where they need it and replace a number of legacy media communications tools, such as posters and A-frames. Coordinating with the OC Transpo PIDs are the passenger information systems, which are made up of the TNEX supplied public announcement and passenger information displays, both on trains and in stations. For line 2 and 4, the passenger information system and station have been expanded to the station entrances as well as platforms and will use updated layouts and content. In the new Stadler vehicles, new digital passenger information displays will provide real-time customer information and arrivals. As noted earlier, a great emphasis has been placed on communications to customers during service disruptions by providing operations and customer services the tools to support customers. In summary, we are excited for customers to experience these new stations and services with a wayfinding system that is modern, familiar, and supportive. I will now pass it on to my colleague, Joel Lemieux.
Thank you, Devin, and good morning. I'm Joel Lemieux. I'm the manager of the Transit Operations Control Center, or TOCC. Next slide, please. The main focus of our project is the successful integration of the Trillium line into our multimodal control center, joining the Confederation line, bus operations, and the Special Constable Unit Communications Center. As some of you may know, Trillium line control had been contracted out to RTC and Dorval prior to the expansion project. We're actively working on putting all the elements in place to ensure operational readiness and oversight for both the pre- and post-revenue service phases, ensuring that all of our new and existing staff have all of the tools necessary to perform their duties effectively. TOCC procedures, job aids, checklists, and service plans are being modified to include the expanded Trillium line in order to support an integrated approach to managing the entire transit network. Next slide, please. Actuellement, les systèmes de contrôle de train du ligne Trillium
The
sont
control system of the Trillium line are being integrated while we are preparing to greet our new controllers.
closely with transit training and development to ensure that our new staff are receiving all of the training and certification required to perform their safety critical duties. In all, we are onboarding 11 full-time and up to 5 relief diesel rail controllers to support revenue service and overnight maintenance operations 24/7, 365. TOCC staff will be participating in all of the operational readiness activities, including testing and commissioning, drills and exercises, trial running, dress rehearsals, to ensure that all of our staff are prepared and confident heading into revenue service. Next slide, please. Training rail controllers takes quite a bit of time. Our new Trillium line controllers will receive 3 months of classroom training, followed by 200 hours of on-the-job training, with strict competency evaluations along the way in order to achieve full certification. Controllers must be certified not only to control trains, but also on the safety critical support systems such as fire alarms and the emergency tunnel ventilation system. 12 diesel rail controllers are currently in training. 8 of them recently spent time shadowing heavy rail controllers at RTC and Dorval to observe the application of rules and procedures in a live operating environment. While the new controllers have rail operations experience, we will support their learning as well as safe operations by having experienced certified mentors from RTC and Dorval in the control center for support and oversight during the pre-revenue phase and the early days of revenue service. Thanks, and I will now pass it along to my colleague, Connie Gleason.
Merci, Joel. Bon matin. Je m'appelle Connie Gleason.
Good morning. I'm Connie Gleason, Program Manager, Rail Contracts.
Working with my colleagues here with me today and other talented individuals throughout the Transit Services Department, we're actively preparing the team for the administrative and contractual elements of operations. Next slide. Using lessons learned from stage 1 and industry best practices, we are working closely with the maintainer and internal partners to operationalize various aspects of the project agreement. The intent is to have processes, plans, and agreements and principles in place prior to operations. The Maintenance Management Performance Reporting System, or MPERS, is the maintainer's system that tracks all service requests, in addition to providing information on service delivered, planned, and reactive maintenance and asset management. The team has been working closely with the maintainer on the development of the system and the implementation of a joint test plan. In parallel with the testing of the performance reporting system, the team is identifying and developing various supporting interpretation guides, work instructions, and checklists required for operations, including the delivery and content of daily reports prepared by the maintainer and the city. Led by an exceptional team from Rail Construction Program, I am joined by my colleagues from transit facilities and various city departments to further assign maintenance responsibilities between the city and the maintainer. Rail Construction hosts a regular meeting with internal groups and the maintainer to discuss and confirm areas of responsibility not clearly defined in the project agreement, specifically around locations with shared spaces or integrated entrances. This process is in its final stages and will be completed prior to operations. Next slide. To date, the team has completed 3 of 5 standard operating procedures, ranging from submitting a service request to our internal invoicing process and the invoicing process with the maintainer. The SOPs, work instructions, or plans will be developed in collaboration with the maintainer. Through lessons learned from stage 1, the team is working closely with the construction team on a transition plan from construction to operations, including participating in regularly focused meetings on a variety of topics. As an example, we are entering early discussions on a plan for the seamless transfer of documentation from the construction team to operations. Through the project agreement, the city and TNX are required to hold a monthly maintenance committee meeting. The meetings are currently taking place with a strong focus on the lead up to operations. Following the transition from construction to operations, a term of reference will be implemented for the duration of the maintenance term. The terms of reference is currently in draft and will be finalized and implemented in advance of line 2 operations. Over the past number of years, the department has been actively working on the development of the performance reporting system with the maintainer, including participating in various workshops. The workshops range from discussing and confirming our mutual understanding of the contractual requirements for the system and applying lessons learned from stage 1 and industry best practices. Recently, we have been meeting weekly to table talk mock work orders or service requests that may be submitted during operations. Following full system functionality, the city and maintainer will then test mock events in the live system to understand and confirm the system's availability and action any minor changes that may be required. We continue to foster an open dialogue with our internal partners and with the maintainer during the lead up to and following revenue service. Thank you. Merci. J'ai le plaisir de vous présenter mon collègue.
And I'd like to give the floor to my colleague, Caroline Villemer.
Bonjour à tous.
Thank you, Connie. I'm Caroline Villemer. I'm Section Manager, Field Operations.
Talk to you about the pre-launch coordination and live testing. Next slide, please. The pre-launch coordination and live testing project ensures that important and necessary steps in preparation and training our staff and stakeholders for revenue service and emergency events are being planned and practiced prior to opening for our revenue service. This project is divided into 4 primary deliverables: tabletop exercises, technical drills and integrated exercises, bus loop operational tests, dress rehearsal activities. These activities will allow internal and external stakeholders to plan, review, and develop standard operating procedures and work instructions prior to the revenue service of each of the extensions. Next slide. Tabletop exercises. This allows us to engage stakeholders, identify gaps, and validate the standard operating procedures. We implement the lessons learned and provide feedback to our training and development group to update the procedures accordingly. To date, we're very proud to say that we have validated 38 SOPs and completed 28 exercises. To name a few, activation de l'interphone d'urgence, fermeture de station, évacuation des véhicules.
PI activations, medical emergencies, and many others.
Bus loop testing. As Dan Richardson has already mentioned, this is to test the design of the bus loops to ensure the safe circulation flow of our service. Technical drills and integrated exercises. This allows us to validate our procedure flow and employee understanding of these SOPs and for them to develop their knowledge. The feedback is provided to our training and development group and is included into our dress rehearsals at the end. Of course, some of these will include fire, paramedics, and police as required. The dress rehearsal. This is to validate the operation and functionality of our stations, the customers facing procedures, and to confirm that the needs of our customers and staff will be met and allow our staff the opportunity to practice procedures while interacting with stakeholders and customers prior to our revenue service. Next slide, please. The dress rehearsal. The dress rehearsal will take place over a one-day period in a controlled environment. We will be inviting approximately 500 city staff and family and friends to participate in a scripted and improvised scenarios on a fully functional system. This will take place shortly after trial running. Observations will be tracked and feedback will be used to validate the procedures and again, identify any opportunities for improvements prior to opening for the service. A small list of the current planned injections include elevator entrapment, suspicious package, found items, alternate service plans, public washrooms out of service, and of course, wayfinding throughout the stations. Next slide, please. Stakeholder familiarizations. This will provide OC Transpo employees with a controlled advanced access to explore the system. The rail superintendents will be training the representatives for each of the service areas, and in turn, these representatives will conduct tours for their respective areas. We also will provide some stakeholders with exposure to certain system elements. Next slide. And now I turn it over to my colleague.
Hello, my name is Paul Trevitat. Je suis le chef de sécurité pour OC Transpo.
I'm the Chief Safety Officer at OC Transpo.
Le cadre réglementaire du réseau O-Train est très complexe.
The regulatory framework for the O-Train is very, very complex. We have two regulatory regimes.
It's very complex. We have two distinct regulatory regimes. The Trillium Line is a federally regulated operation, which means we are regulated by Transport Canada, and we also have regulatory obligations to other federal agencies such as Canadian Transportation Agency, Environment and Climate Change Canada, Employment and Social Development Canada, and so on. Whereas for the Confederation Line, we have a delegation agreement with Transport Canada, and so it is a self-regulated model where the city, and in our case, the city manager, is the regulator. There are several regulatory requirements and filings that must be submitted prior to going into revenue service on the Trillium Line. And this is under the scope of the regulatory compliance rail operational readiness project. On the right side of the slide there are a number of regulatory instruments that we must have in place before entering into revenue service. We are actively working to ensure that all the required policies and procedures are in place to ensure safe operations. Once implemented, my team will ensure compliance through oversight and monitoring activities. Next slide, please. Arguably, one of the most important regulatory instruments and documents is our safety management system, SMS. Given our unique regulatory framework, we're required to actually have two SMS documents. One that is specific to Trillium for Transport Canada, that's a direct result of the requirements under the Railway Safety Act and must be compliant with the Safety Management System regulations of 2015. And we have a second SMS that is a more general and all-encompassing one, which we refer to as the OC Transpo SMS, that covers our entire organization, which includes the Confederation Line, conventional bus, paratranspo, vehicle maintenance, and facilities. Both SMS documents are based on industry standards and best practices, and they're underpinned by 4 pillars, which are informed by 12 key safety processes. For Trillium, the SMS will be submitted to Transport Canada and is required in order to obtain the railway operating certificate. Next slide, please. Similar to the SMS, the security management system establishes a framework in which comprehensive and effective security measures are developed, implemented, and maintained. The security management system includes activities such as exercises and drills, security-related training, risk assessments, and communication campaigns. Some of the elements that are unique to the security management system are the security plan and the threat and vulnerability assessment. The security plan is actually a restricted appendix to the SCMS, and it outlines our security response to potential security threats that are identified by the other unique element that we have, which is the threat and vulnerability assessment. The threat and vulnerability assessment, TVA, is conducted by a third party to evaluate our security posture in light of potential threats. In addition, since the closure of the Trillium line while it was under construction, the new passenger rail transportation security regulations were released by Transport Canada, and their requirements will also be incorporated into the upcoming revision to our security management system. The SCMS must be submitted to Transport Canada prior to revenue service, and the security plan is then submitted annually to Transport Canada's rail security. Et maintenant, je vais passer le microphone à mon collègue, Monsieur Duquette.
I'd now like to give the floor to Mr. Duquette.
Thank you. Bonjour and good morning.
Hello.
The Deputy Chief Safety Officer with OC Transpo. Today I'll be talking about the Special Constable units, which is part of the Safety Department. Next slide, please. We currently have new constables being trained for the expansion of rail. Nous avons actuellement de nouveaux gendarmes formés.
We have new special constables that are being trained for the expansion of the network.
Focused on rail will be in part to increase visibility, but also to deal with the unique circumstances that the new and expanded service provide. The constables are an integral part of our emergency management planning. They provide the necessary field leadership to deal with any situation that arise, but also to liaise with our partners at OPS, OFS, and EMS. In order to be as prepared as possible and to eliminate delays, the SU dispatch is housed in the same room as dispatch for all our services, the TOCC. To augment their training, the special constables play an active role in the tabletops and drills leading up to launch. These activities validate SOPs and practice lesser used skills to keep them sharp. And now I'll pass it along to my colleague, Ken Gordon.
Merci, Dwayne. Bonjour, je suis Ken.
Hello, I'm Ken Gordon, Manager Transit Training and Development.
I'm Ken Gordon, Manager of Training and Development for OC Transpo. And today I will be providing information on the training and simulator projects. Next slide, please. The new Diesel Rail Operator Program, also known as NDRO, is the program that we use to teach people to drive trains safely and according to legislation. The program consists of lesson plans, presentations, activities, quizzes, exams, and on-the-job training. And overall, each cohort will receive 300 hours of training content. Similar to learning to drive a car, you learn the basics in class. You then move to operating in the parking lot, then residential roadways, followed by the highways. Once you have shown that you have the necessary skills, you receive a license. The same applies to new rail operators. You start with rules training for 4 weeks in the class. You then move to the rail yard where you learn to drive the trains and move under low speeds. Once you've completed 2 weeks of yard training on both the Lint and the Flirt, you move out to the rail line for 120 hours of OJT with a certified instructor. Next slide, please. Exposure training allows for valuable training without the risk or injury or impact to service. It is also key when training people how to operate on a track that isn't commissioned. By introducing key concepts early and allowing time for trial and error, the trainee is in a better state when moving out to the field. DRO training is intensive and requires many hours. And the less time you can train, not using your most expensive assets, the more training you can provide. Next slide, please. Simulators allow the learner to experience how the equipment will look and feel and operate. It also allows the learner to make mistakes in a safe environment and learn from those mistakes. It also allows us to teach operators the soft skills they need before they are on an actual train. So things like ringing the bell as you enter stations, signing out equipment, radio usage, cab familiarity. Next slide. Thank you. I will now pass the floor back to Madame Amocal.
Merci beaucoup, Ken.
Thank you, Ken.
All of you, for sure. Your work is a testament to your commitment to delivering excellence in public transit. Je suis très, très fière de la prestation que vous avez faite. Je sais que c'était pas
I'm very, very proud of you. I know it's not easy for any of you, but your performance is exemplary.
Experts are doing an incredible job, and we are confident that we'll deliver a successful launch. As you all know, June is Employee Appreciation Month at the City of Ottawa. I would like to take a brief moment to thank every person who works with us here at OC Transpo. I have a great team. I'm pleased to work with such dedicated, committed, and hardworking men and women. I'm very, very proud of all of them, not only those who are here, all of them at OC Transpo, the 3,000 employees. Next, I will provide you some upcoming information. Next slide, please. Further to this, see here. At future Transit Commission and Light Rail Committee meetings, we look forward to providing you with updates on the Stage 2 communications and marketing report, progress on the work set out in the Public Inquiry Action Plan, and regular updates from me and our service matrix. As mentioned on the previous slide, Mayor Sutcliffe and councillors will receive daily updates during the trial running period of Stage 2, as well as a technical briefing upon the completion of the trial running period. Further to this, we will continue to provide public outreach to the community. Next slide, please. I want to encourage you all to stay connected with us through the various channels as listed on screen. And I'm now pleased to address any questions you may have. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. That's it.
Thank you very much, merci Renee, and thanks to everyone. It's great to see some new faces here who we don't see on a regular basis. We might deal with them through our various office, but welcome you if it's your first time here before a committee, and I'm sure we'll have some questions for you. So we'll start with the members, if there's anybody present or online. Put your hand up, please. Councillor Cower.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks for the presentation, the information. Some of my questions are just out of curiosity and clarification from what we heard. One is about the operators for the new line. So is it all new operators who are being trained for line 2 and 4, or is there some overlap between line 1 and is it going to be a distinct group of operators for Confederation line and Trillium line?
Thank you, Chair. I can answer that question. It's actually a mix of all of the above. There is a requirement for all operators to have attained a certain amount of bus operator experience prior to being onto the rail. Some of the operators are returning from the Trillium line prior to the shutdown, and some of them are taking this opportunity to transfer from line 1 to line 2. So there'll be actually a mixed variety of all levels of experience coming in.
Okay, thank you. On the familiarization with stakeholders, for example, people with accessibility requirements and seniors, can we get a little more context? What's involved in that? How is that training or familiarity carried out? What would that look like?
Thank you, Chair. We work with some stakeholder groups already, very similar to stage one. And so we engage them to see what do they need, how can we best help them, and when can we do this? We obviously cannot do it while some construction is still happening. And so we continue to do this after rail operation will open. And so tours, some specific things that they require, that they want, we listen to them.
Okay, thank you. And I also wanted to ask, just overall, obviously, there are a lot of lessons learned from the launch 4 years ago. I'm curious about on the team of managers that we have in front of us, how many people would have been involved in that? How much corporate knowledge and history do we have linked directly to 2019? So I think that's important to have that experience to learn from.
There's a variety of managers here who've been on stage one and do have experience, have gone through the reports, have prepared response reports, and have incorporated lessons learned from stage one. Myself specifically, I'm managing or preparing the trial running program right now with Transit Next for the Trillium Line launch. And we are looking extensively at lessons learned from stage one, incorporating them, some to which Madame Amilcar mentioned today, the daily briefings on trial running, as well as the final technical briefing, to which we'll be putting more context soon for you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'm just continuing with the members, Councillor Curry, then Councillor Kavanaugh, and then I'll go to the non-member.
On what committee? Okay, thank you very much for that. It's so interesting to see how many people it takes to run this operation. I know this is only just a few, but it is fascinating just to see how many departments, how complex this is. You know, we only just hear about these things, but it's really good to meet you and actually listen to what you do. Much more complex, I think, than any of us really understands. So you know the military saying, one of my favorite sayings, that Plan A never survives first contact with the enemy? It's the greatest saying. So I guess my question is always, so Plan A is not going to go as we planned, never does, but Plan B, C, D, obviously you have in hand. I'm wondering though, the simple Plan A that is going along, and then we have a hydro outage. So I see, you know, we have digital signs was one of the presentations, and, you know, a lot of cybersecurity plans. But for a simple power outage, would that be seamless in your thinking right now? The power goes out, massive storm like we had, like the Direcco maybe. Would that be seamless?
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Curry, for your question. So for a simple power outage, perhaps it's a localized power outage at a station. We have emergency backup generators that seamlessly click on when the power goes out. And then at each station, we have large generator hookups that can power the entire station, or just emergency loads, depending on what's needed and for how long. For a larger global outage, on the Trillium Line, they are diesel electric trains. However, you know, all the systems are back, the electric systems, such as signaling, train control systems, they are backed up by emergency power. So we would have to evaluate the duration that the power outage is to continue service. However, in the event of a power outage, it would be a seamless transition.
Thank you for that. So in the wayfinding, you know, if the power goes out, there are enough signs you feel that are not only digital. So if the power went out for quite a long time, I guess people would maybe be off the train after a while, or, you know, have exited. But the wayfinding, there's a backup of not just digital information, but other regular signs?
Through you, Chair. Yes, correct. The digital signs complement the existing static signs that are located throughout the stations at very strategic points, leading customers to exits in the appropriate locations in this type of scenario.
A similar question to Councillor Gowers is that, you know, from 2019, what is different this time in terms of updates to council? Were there actually, and maybe you have other examples, but were there daily updates to council last time? Like, how is this process different in terms of reporting to councillors?
Troy would, yeah, okay, you can come, Michael. I was not there, so I cannot speak.
Thank you for the question. So in stage one, we basically did trial running and the team met internally, but there were no public updates about the progress of trial running, daily updates. And so what we're planning to provide as part of Trillium Line is that daily update with the numbers, the performance from the day prior, a list and a summary of the issues from the day prior, and do that every day during the trial running period, which will be a minimum 21 days. And then we will wrap that up with a technical briefing of the outcome. We did do a technical briefing in stage one, but it was very cursory. This time we'll be providing more detailed view on the reliability issues, the performance, and how we met the 98.5 and any issues that arose over the term of the trial running period.
Great, thank you for that. They're always learning, eh? The last question I have, Mr. Chair, is really, so did I understand correctly? So because of the Trillium Line and because it goes to the airport, it is different. It's different in many ways. Is that, would you say that different in many ways and much more work to report and more entities to deal with? Is it more work or is it just different work?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. Yes, it's actually quite a bit more work that's involved with getting ourselves to a point where we will qualify to be approved to have our railway operating certificate updated and in advance of the revenue service. Yes.
Okay, so just to follow up, you don't see a problem for the timing of that, though. It's just that it's more work.
It's just more work. Yes, that's correct. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for to all of you for that presentation. It was very helpful.
Thank you. Just sticking with the members, Councillor Kavanaugh, then Brockington, then Mo.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Renee and your team for the presentation. I think it really helps us to appreciate the number of responsibilities to manage, and it's good to have you here together. I appreciate very much. And one of the things I wanted to talk about was stakeholders. Providing stakeholders with exposure to system elements. You've talked about that, but I'd like a little more detail, please, on what that means.
Thank you for this. So some of the stakeholders will be some key external stakeholders like emergency services, fire, paramedics, and police. And so we work with our partners to see what do they need. They need to be trained, they need access, and so forth. So that would be some of the stakeholders. We also have some as I mentioned, key groups, like some accessibility groups that we want to make sure that everybody is ready, and that when we do open, even after we open revenue service, that we continue to support them, to welcome them on our system. And if there's anything that we can do to ensure the transition, ensure that they be comfortable with our system, that we provide that to them.
Thank you, because one of the choke points was platforms, was the station platforms, and it just, problems with the doors, etc. So I'm concerned in terms of just the entry, the bus loops. I really appreciate the attention that needs, because with stage one, it was not well understood, and it didn't seem to have a comfort level for passengers. They were confused, and it was problematic. So I just want to know a little more detail about, for example, you've got the bus loops, you've got cyclists coming up, you've got people just walking into the station. Will we see better coordination there in terms of where people will understand where to go and have a smooth transition?
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Kavanaugh, thanks for the question. It's an excellent question, and it is something that we are working carefully on to try and improve upon that seamless connection for transit customers between bus and train, for cyclists entering the station, as well as pedestrians. So that is something that we're working on. We're working to learn from the lessons in stage one, especially on some of those busier platforms. Some of the things that we're doing include evaluating platform space, layout of amenities on the platform, including shelters, and how customers move between the trains and the certain bus stops. And that alludes to the project that we're working on in terms of the platform assignments, to make sure that's done in an intuitive fashion, to make sure that those connections happen as seamlessly as possible.
I appreciate that, because that's probably the biggest thing that we heard from the immediate coming on of stage 2 was where do I go? But also just it was not intuitive and caused confusion. So I appreciate that as well. We'll have Papudos as well, and I don't know how that's going to work if that's going to add, because that didn't exist in as much in stage 1.
Thank you, Chair. Working in tandem with Devin and with other folks involved in that conversation, we'll be working to identify the location of the passenger pickup and drop-off areas at each of the stations to make sure that that information conveyed as clearly and as concisely to customers as possible. And that's all part of that goal of making sure that the movement of people in and around the stations is as seamless as possible.
And I appreciate reporting back to our committee and to transit, of course, as well in that. And the time you're taking for seniors and accessibility, that's really important. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Brockington.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the detailed presentation this morning. I appreciate the focus on the transparency and openness. Even if there's bad news, let us have it. This does, just to Councillor Curry's question, certainly this is night and day difference between the two lines, and this is an improved strategy. So I appreciate the direction that staff is going. And like I said, let's just have the information and make sure we're fully aware going forward. So I certainly appreciate and endorse that. Station design, there was a chart that had a number of bubbles. I think you were presenting that. And I just wanted to ask and be reminded what type of outreach occurred with passengers or members of the public before stations were actually designed. Did we ask passengers what they're looking for in a station, whether it be amenities, the flow, how they're actually designed? Did we incorporate that type of feedback or information before we embarked on this phase 2?
Katia, would you like to answer, please?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Through the chair, to be honest, I'll have to look into that and bring the answer back.
Fair enough. I appreciate that. One thing that we noticed when line 1 opened was particularly at the bookends of the line at Tunney's Pasture and Blair, the functionality of the stations, this is where we have bus and train passengers sort of mixing together, was not well designed. And so have we taken note, or were there lessons learned from these two stations in particular to ensure that when we get to the bookends of line 2, we don't have the same type of challenges, space limitations, flow, just trying to cram in so many passengers in limited space? If you could elaborate on this matter, I would really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. That's a great question. And we have learned a number of lessons from both Tunney's and Blair and Herdman as well, being the third terminus station, if you will. Part of that work has been to evaluate how best to assign routes to each platform at the station. One of the challenges that we had at Tunney's and at Blair is that when they opened, they were two of the busiest single transit stations in Canada. And part of the challenge is trying to find a way to bring bus routes close to the station in a way that there is the opportunity to have quick connections, but also to allow customers to easily find their route and easily find their bus when they're at that platform. And part of that challenge is how to distribute routes throughout the station in a meaningful way, but still to allow that good flow between platforms and along platforms for customers looking to find their routes. So we spent a lot of time analyzing stations and how customers move and how to assign routes to each platform at each of the stations. The nice thing is that when stage 2 opens, the new terminus stations will be a slightly lower volume than Tunney's and Blair, which allows us to assign those platforms in a more meaningful way. But there has been a lot of work put into assigning those platforms and making sure that the route groupings are still intuitive for customers, so that when they are looking for the route, they still have the opportunity to catch the bus. I'll say multiple buses heading in the same direction without having to spread along very long platforms like they would at Tunney's or at Blair. So we'll see that improvement as we move into stage 2.
Excellent, thank you. Just on wayfinding signage and markers and symbols, can you talk about how we can encourage private sector organizations, hotels, community centers, like entities that exist near LRT stations, to include that within their own facilities, whether it's hotels within the hotel binder has a little blurb about proximity to LRT stations, but even when you get out of the downtown core, to encourage others to help guide guests, visitors to the closest transit station. Are we doing that? Can that be done? Whatever can make it easy for people, again, particularly outside the downtown core, to ensure that wayfinding signage, not only what OC Transpo implements, but also others, whatever they can do. Are we having those types of conversations?
Through you, Chair, thank you for the question, Councillor. As I mentioned earlier, and if we look at stage 1 as an example, some of that coordination was done at locations such as Rideau and as well as Place de Ville, where we had quite extensive wayfinding within those adjoining properties. We're doing a similar exercise, working with the airport, which has been a very collaborative process. We're also in the process of working with the EY Center and a number of other major destinations or that customers will be traveling to and from to support the shopping malls and South Keys, et cetera, as well. We also have what we refer to as trailblazing signage. And so you would have seen that some of that in the downtown core, particularly around the launch, which is pedestrian signage at key kind of transfer points or decision points that guide customers until they are within a viewing area of the station where they can see the large red O pylon on that the beacon that calls them to the station. So to your question, yes, we are having a number of conversations with major destinations around the transit stations, and we'll be supporting pedestrians and cyclists by having on-street signage leading up to stations as well.
Excellent. Okay. The last thing is just regarding an update on the actual construction of line 2. And Chair, I can hold this if we want to get questions on this morning's update first, and then hold it to the end. I'm at your service, but I would like just to get a brief update from Madame Amical on how things are going, and if the October service opening is still online on schedule.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. Yeah, you and I had an exchange here on that, and I'm gonna allow it. It's a huge project, and we're all following this very closely. So I'll just give Mr. Morgan and Renee some time to get ready to provide that. We'll go to Councillor Lowe, and then I have some questions on the matter before us. And then if there's no further questions, then obviously all the work that's being undertaken here, which is tremendous, and it's good to see, is all tied to the construction project. So I have no issue of getting an update there at the end of the agenda items that's before us. So we will do that. Councillor Lowe.
Thank you, Chair. And nice to meet some of you in person for the first time, despite having worked with you for so long. It still feels weird for me to compliment you, because this was really good work, and because I used to be semi-subordinate to most of you. I have some questions about some of the service arrangements with line 2 at the transfer station, especially Line Bank and Leitrim, I guess. There are a lot of local buses that are less frequent, and I think the 74 and the 93 are going to be the main connections out of those stations. Given that the line 2 trains south of, given that line 2 trains are going to be a little less frequent than line 1, are there opportunities to kind of coordinate the transfer so that someone's not stuck waiting at Line Bank, let's say, for 30 minutes for the 74 on a Saturday night?
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Councillor Lowe. I can say that work is ongoing right now, and we're working through those strategies. We can report back with an update once that work is further along, but that is something that we are considering in the work that we're doing right now.
Thank you. And I want to go to the point where we were talking about some of the stakeholder introductions to the facilities that we had. I was a bus operator when line 1 was coming up and about to be opened. And at that time, there was very little opportunity for us to truly familiarize ourselves with the station. So I think this will be like a huge help because we were just given diagrams of the labyrinths and everything. Granted, the line 2 stations are not complex, but does that involve all staff? Like, do they have the opportunity to actually go and explore the stations, if they want, of course, so that they can at least have that background knowledge in their head to help out customers?
Thank you, Chair. As part of the program to bring staff up to speed on some of the changes with stage 2, all staff are going to be participating in station wayfinding exercises on the buses. We plan to launch that later this year, and all staff will participate in driving along the rail line to see not only the rail replacement lines for 2 and 4, but to experience the actual stations and some of the bus loops.
Thank you. My questions are a bit fragmented, but next question is about the drills and the tabletop exercises in case things happen. One of the biggest differences, I think, between line 1 and line 2 is some of the more remote stretches of the railway. How much consideration has been given to that when we're talking about possible train evacuations or just incidents that may take place in that very long stretch between Leitrim and Bowesville, for example? Like if the train, there's no chance of that train being moved back, let's say.
Thank you, Chair, for the question. We've had extensive tabletop drills working with all our partners within the city, where the participants have been OFS, OPS, and EMS. All of them have had input into this. We haven't at this point commenced any of the actual drills in the field, but thus far it has been talked through, but it is recognized that there are some areas that are going to be more difficult. It should also be noted, though, on expansion of line 1, there will be some areas like that as well while they go through the green belt. Having said that, though, all the access routes are planned, but as of yet, we have not had the opportunity to do any of the actual live event drills.
That is reassuring. So thank you. Last question. The passenger info display up aboard the trains. They look great on the flirts. Are there any opportunities for that to be will the lints be retrofitted with something similar?
Through you, Chair, the links will stay with the same passenger information display system that they have currently, but it will be updated to reflect the journey experience that customers will be having now. New station names, announcements, a modernization of the content of the journey message, but not the physical infrastructure itself.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you. I'll see Councillor Lieber.
Thank you very much, and thank you for a very thorough briefing this morning. I just have a couple of questions. Sorry, on stage 1, and I'm sorry to come back to Tunney's pasture again, and it's really in the weeds, but one of the problems we had was that the doors swung out into the flow of people moving. Have we taken that into account for the opening of stage 2? It seems like we shouldn't have to ask, but we wound up having to take doors off of Tunney's pasture station so they wouldn't interfere with passenger flow. Do we know which way the doors swing, and have we modeled everything with that and taken into account?
So on stage 1, thank you for the question, Mr. Chair, through you to the councillor. On stage 1, there was a location at Tunney's pasture where we used there were doors that swung out into the passenger flow area. Those doors were replaced with a coiling grill. And so generally we've stuck with the coiling grill solution. That being said, on line 2, for the volumes are different. Airport Station, for example, uses a sliding door to get to the main platform, but generally we've taken that into account on the new design.
Okay, and at Bayview, because I anticipate that Bayview will be one of the busiest stations, obviously, as a transfer from line one.
Yeah, so Bayview will be one of the busier stations. So we have expanded that, the one platform. It's twice as long now. There's an additional entrance to get to it from the adjacent community, but there's no, I'd have to check specifically if they're swinging into the area, but generally it's perpendicular to the passenger platform at that location.
Okay, I'm looking forward to getting on site there whenever you can arrange that. The digital display that are at the stations, I just want to make sure those, if there's an interruption in service, you're able to show a map of where to walk, for example, to get an R1 bus, like it can be flipped on fairly quickly. Train is down, take I'm sorry, I forget which one it is. It's R4 airport, whatever the replacement bus service is, R2. And you can show a map of how to get there. I'm looking forward to getting those displays up and running.
So I can speak that the passenger information displays will, one of the strategies we're looking at, as I mentioned, around communications is going through scenarios and identifying what customer information is needed at different strategic points. So depending on where the display is and depending on which way the passengers are moving, we are looking to provide that type of information. It's worth noting there are also static signs that are located up by the station entrances and throughout the stations that we refer to as transit information panels. There are large backlit signs that have a similar exercise that's done for customers that are departing the station, what's the type of information that they would need. And we typically include our service there, where the replacement service is as well.
Okay. One of the most frustrating experience passengers have, I think, is that 15 minutes after a service interruption begins where they just don't know where to go. And static signs, I don't think are going to do it. Having the digital displays at the station that can display that the service is down and here's how you walk to the replacement bus service would be very handy to have. So the main thing I'm wondering about is, and I'm sorry, I'm going to screw this up, the MMPRS, the maintenance reporting. Can someone take me through how a maintainer who is supposed to tighten a bolt on trains overnight when they're doing their maintenance, how are they reporting that they have done that? What kind of oversight is being done of those reports? And what kind of redundancy is there with respect to oversight?
Thank you for the question, Chair. That's a great question. So it's essentially that EMPER system is a work order tracking system, if you will. So all work that's performed, whether it's corrective maintenance, planned maintenance, is all put into that system. And it's essentially a work order that has the details of the work, the description of the work that has to be done, and then closing comments as to what they've performed, how they've closed something, how they fixed something. As part of that, their start time and end time is put into that. And then that all manages through the system, and then reports come out of that. Throughout the oversight part of that, we monitor that through a bunch of different aspects, whether that's looking at the work orders themselves to make sure that they're completed properly. We look at to ensure if there is X number of maintenance requirements to be performed that month, that we see that many work orders associated to each of those items. So if it says I need to do 3 a month, we should see 3 of those work orders in the EMPER system that month, and each one would be categorized for planned, for reactive, or corrective maintenance.
And whose job is it to look at those?
So that's through my team. There's a trains and systems teams. We monitor that and look at that as part of the oversight of maintenance and part of the maintenance planning and performing audits and other items associated with that.
And is there, so of that oversight of the work order completions, have you hired those people today?
So some of those people are staff now. It's similar to the line 1 operation. And we continue to staff that up as part of the ongoing onboarding.
Okay, and are they Are they undertaking tabletop exercises, simulation exercises? What are those folks doing today to prepare for their day one of revenue service?
So they do partake in some of those exercises, depending on the nature of the drill, if it's associated with one of their disciplines as an example. But most of it is planning for it. We're still heavily involved with the rail construction team, still with the delivery and reviewing the different systems, the testing, the planning parts of that, to be prepared and having the knowledge associated with each of those different systems, and then planning for the maintenance of those systems as well.
And is there a check function on those overseers? Is there redundant? Who is checking to make sure that they're doing their job?
So that would fall to Paul's team as a regulatory group.
Okay.
Yeah, we have an individual who does periodic, or will be doing periodic audits, just similar as what we're doing currently with line one. And our role, our objective is to ensure that we can see the elements of the safety management system well entrenched and well integrated into our maintenance activities.
Can we look at the org chart? Is that something that can be sent to counselors?
Will do, Chair.
Thank you. It's yeah, I mean, we had I think a key failing that I know we are working to address with respect to making sure that planned maintenance is done, that we know it's done, and whoever is supposed to be checking to make sure that it's done is also being checked on to make sure that they're checking to make sure that things are done. We just can't compromise system reliability and passenger safety. There was a slide, forgive me, I think it was slide 44 or 45. It had, I think as part of the rail safety components, 5 octagons or similarly shaped. It was a bunch of acronyms. Could we be sent what those acronyms mean? And can I just ask, it's obviously a ton of acronyms in this business, but could I ask that any acronym that is crossing our desk be explained to us in the course of doing these? And then finally, is one of the drills that is being done around people who may be seeking to self-harm or commit suicide on our line, are we preparing for that through drills?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. I apologize. I don't have that answer with me, but I will get back to you.
Okay, I took a look at the list of planned, I think it was injections, and I don't know that we need to, but it's something I'm curious to see if we are planning for through those exercises. There's a little graphic at the bottom of these slides. It shows like the trains coming into the station, and then there's a parabus and a bus at the coming out the other side. Can we use that? Can you send that to counselors? That's a great graphic. It's very happy. It's a happy station. Chair, thank you.
Okay, I think the answer is yes. Councillor Curry?
Just a quick question. I just had a question about the special constables. I'm sorry if you said this and I missed it, but how many more special constables will we need now? Will we be hiring, and how is that going? I think you indicated you're fine, but how many more?
Thank you, Chair, for the question. It's a good question. We've added an additional 6 constables. They were hired approximately a week and a half ago or so. They are beginning training.
Wonderful. Just to follow up that, so there's special constables at the airport as well. Would they be interchangeable at all, especially if they go up there? Would they ever be able to become the special constable for the airport, or different contract?
Thanks for the question. Actually, each special constable, through their agreement with the Ottawa Police Services, is given a specific jurisdiction. Having said that, we already liaise with some of our other special constables, like at Carleton University and such, where they do cooperate. And I should have mentioned during one of the earlier questions, we do actually have a live exercise at the airport closer to launch, where we will be liaising with both of our, with all our counterparts, not only the ones in the city, but the ones at the airport as well.
Super. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Lowe is back on.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, there was actually one other question that I had missed on my own list here. With the multi-hundred space park and ride that's being opened at Bowesville Station with Line 2, do you foresee what kind of changes do you foresee to the usage at existing park and rides in Barrhaven and Riverside South, like Nepean Woods and Riverview specifically, and then even minor diversions of that ridership from Fallowfield and Strandherd?
Thank you, Chair. and Thank you, Councillor Lowe. That's something that I think we can get back to you on and provide an update on how we expect that ridership to change. That's not something that we have the information for today.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. If there's no other questions, I'll just jump in with some of my own questions. Councillor Gowan, I think Greg kind of touched on it at the beginning, that there's an expectation that we've learned from our experience on stage one, and I think it's been peppered into a lot of the presentations. And I'm wondering if the GM can just confirm that you're putting in a full effort to learn from stage one, to take the specific issues and problems that we have, and taking that to putting that to the top of the list to integrate into our readiness plans.
Chair, the answer is definitely yes. And this is now a part of our business.
Okay. I think Councillor Brockington was on the right track too on the wayfinding in some of our commercial centers that have stations or are near stations. And I won't name one that I was in recently, and I was very underwhelmed by the lack of wayfinding within there, and sort of compare that to visiting other cities around the world where it's generally present. And I really see it as, I hope they see it as their civic duty to help us. I think it's good for their business to help us in terms of the connection and the integration with the transit system. And I'm very cognizant with Riverside South in particular that we are going to be building an entire city around the Line Bank Station, and we're going to have considerable commercial and residential development. And I'll be looking very closely at whether we need to maybe put it in a site plan saying you will help us with this, and we'll provide you with the signs. But there's going to be an expectation there. I'm sure it's probably not allowed, Councillor Leeper, right now into the site plan, but that's probably one of the tools that we have for these newer developments. If we're building transit-friendly community, that we would say, please help us with some of the wayfinding. So I'll follow up with that. And again, some of these site plans will cross my desk once we get into that development around the Line Bank Station. I think what's going to be very interesting, and that's why I'm pleased to see this today, and I hope the public is impressed by it, is in my community, we have 2 new stations that are coming online that it is a brand new service, rapid transit service that goes to Bowesville and to Line Bank. And residents of these communities will wake up one day and they have a new option. And they're going to be asking the question, all right, how do I integrate this into my life now that I have this option? And so maybe if someone could just speak to the planning that's going into to connect with what will be, I think, new riders coming to the realization that they now have a rapid transit system in their community after many years. And again, I think are now starting to think about, how is my life going to change? How am I going to get from point A to point B? So if you just speak to that preparation for especially these newer communities that have not had this level of service or had a station in their community.
Thank you for the question, Chair. I think it's really important to note that a lot of work is going into the connection between the existing network and the new stations, and how residents will make that connection. As was presented previously, there's the interim network that will be in place on day one, and that's been designed around bringing customers and residents from their neighborhoods to those stations, specifically Line Bank, Bowesville, and the new southern stations. That work will obviously transition in the future into the ultimate network that will be in place. That's part of our strategic route review that's happening right now. And that same approach will be undertaken to try and find ways to bring residents from that area to the south and Riverside South and Barrhaven and connect them to the new station. So that work is definitely underway, and it's part of how we're planning routes and connections into those stations.
Okay, and just a suggestion, I think it would be helpful to come up with, first of all, I think the destination survey, once we see it at the Transit Commission at some point, I think will be a real eye opener to where people are going and how they get there. And we're going to see some very some areas of the city where it's not easy to get there through transit right now, just because it's a significant geographical stretch. And these are some of the smaller employment nodes that we've got throughout the city that usually have kind of some heavier industrial use. So, but I think it's worth looking at the major employment nodes that we have and identifying early to people, saying, hey, you know, if you work at the Civic Hospital, this is how you can get there by train. If you work at Algonquin or go to school, so we could come up with a list, I think, of several major nodes, and hopefully encourage people to use the transit system, because there'll be a lot of people that are going to that destination. So just a suggestion on that front. Some good questions on special constables, and that's something that I'm looking at very closely. I really think we're shifting from over time from a really bus-oriented system to now a rail system. And as many councillors say to the police, we want to see a police presence. We want to see a public safety presence. And I'm hoping that the new hires that we're bringing online will ride the trains and be on the trains and be present. And I would say to you, don't buy a car for them. Don't buy an SUV for them. Put them on the trains and have them present, particularly for those long stretches. If you're going from South Keys, through the Greenbelt, that's a long stretch where, you have no access to the operator. Unlike on the bus system where, you go through the long stretches, there is someone from OC Transpo there. So I'm interested in some initial feedback in terms of how you're going to have that presence on the transit system. And again, we've seen things happening in Toronto, highly disturbing, and I don't want them to occur here, and I don't want to be too cynical on that, but hopefully you're working towards having that presence on the train.
Thank you, Chair, for the question. Absolutely. That's one of the things we are looking at right now. It's not complete as of yet, but we're currently doing a review of our shift deployment to have a greater focus on the rail. Part of it is for visibility. There's also other areas that we'd like them to be focused on as well. But we are cognizant of the fact that the City of Ottawa is shifting from a bus to a rail system, and we are in the process of redefining our shift structure so they have that greater focus.
Sometimes when I see, when I'm on the train, I do see employees, right? Because our employees are using the system to get home, to get from work, they're wearing uniform. Again, I wouldn't expect them to intervene in a difficult and high risk security situation, but hopefully we're training them that if you're on the system and if you see something, say something.
Thank you, Chair.
Chair, thank you for your comments about that and expressing some preoccupations related to safety and security while passengers make use of our LRT system. One of the challenges we have, of course, with the City of Ottawa is the extent of the geography that we have to cover. So notwithstanding the fact, of course, that we are migrating to a rail-based transit system, we still have buses, and the buses are operating throughout the entire geography of this city. So it behooves us to be able to respond to the security needs and safety needs of all of our customers and employees throughout the system. And I think it's important to recognize that it would certainly be well received if we could have special constable on every train, but the reality is that the number of calls that we have on an annual basis is in the order of 22,000 calls for service. And it puts a tremendous load on the organization. And so there are things that we are putting in place to try and partner with resources in the City of Ottawa, such as the Ottawa Police Services, case in point, as well as other stakeholders that have an interest in assuring the safety and security, such as the Rito Center, for example. We've been in talks working with them as well. But to your point, you stated, Chair, that, you know, we have employees that are in uniform, possibly using our transit system. We also have to be mindful, of course, of the our requirement to uphold the collective agreements, scope of duty requirements. So I agree with you. There is a requirement to see something, say something. And so, for example, a passenger emergency intercom system that we have on the trains enables an intervention to be initiated. And then through our control system, we have an ability to be able to respond to a variety of different situations that may unfold.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate the complexity of it, and as long as we're working towards it, I can think of an incident where I did see an employee, someone was smoking on the platform, and said, "You can't smoke," and the person didn't make a big scene out of it. So again, I appreciate it might be just goodwill in some cases, but I think it's just prided, and again, we want our employees to be safe, and not every intervention necessarily will be that friendly, but I appreciate the answers today. Thank you for that. Last question is on the multi-use pathway, and maybe no one is in a position to respond to that today, but the reestablishment of the multi-use pathway from Leitrim, can someone comment on that in terms of the reestablishment of that?
Thank you for the question, Chair. So there is a plan to reinstate the pathway and extend the pathway effectively from South Keys all the way to where the rail line crosses Earl Armstrong. So we are in the process of that. There is some work related to the crossings there's a couple of critical crossings, one at Leitrim, one at Leicester, that we're still working on the timing of that. But the plan is that there will be a multi-use pathway, a stone dust pathway that goes the full length of the alignment, basically South Keys all the way to Earl Armstrong. So that's in the works.
Thank you. And that's a neat little enhancement, just like that Carlton multi-use path bridge is going to be. It's going to be a huge enhancement for connectivity for the community and that. So I look forward to hearing more details on that. I see Councillor Kavanaugh's hand up, which I'll go to Councillor Kavanagh, and then since you're warmed up, I'll get you to respond to Councillor Brockington's questions just at a highest level in terms of the current status of the project. And then maybe you can just touch on some of the things in slide 53 that you're going to continue to keep council informed as we go forward. So Councillor Kavanagh, before we go to that.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Chair. Maybe this is better for the next section, but with all this talk about the stations, I just want to make sure there's no silos between the project and the city in terms of connectivity, because there's still some outstanding issues. I'm quite aware of them with 7 stations coming to Bay Ward that connectivity has not been resolved, and this is pedestrian and cycling, to make it as accessible as possible. And I just want to make sure that there is a go-to person who talks with the city about this, because it's a priority. We need to make it easy to get to, and people aren't driving there; they're walking or cycling. And some of the pathways are NCC; they're not winter cleared, and we still haven't got that completely worked out. It concerns me, and I just want to know who the point person is to. I'll assume it's Michael, but just because that's who I talk to all the time. But I just want to make sure that that continues, because it is a priority. We can't build a system without it being connected to the communities. So has that been thought through? Thanks.
Mr. Chair, through you to the councillor, we're absolutely continuing to advance the connectivity file as much as possible. We stay in close contact with transportation planning generally, transit, all of our partners within the city to make sure that we do prioritize connectivity to the stations. Some cases, there's still kind of an open question mark. I agree in terms of where we're putting in new pathways, and there's is the pathway lit? Is the pathway winter maintained? Those questions still exist, and certainly they exist for pathways that are maintained by our partners, for pathways that are in close proximity to the stations where transit is maintaining them, or where Public Works is maintaining them. Obviously, we have a lot more control for some of the pathways that go a farther distance. We have to work with our partners at the NCC to establish those requirements for for those pathways. So that work continues. We know that for the Trillium line, which is coming online later this year, the addition of a pedestrian bridge over Hunt Club Road is a fabulous addition. The addition of Rideau River pedestrian bridge, which is still still not complete, later this year will be completed, is a fabulous addition. So certainly on the Trillium line, we've done as much as possible to provide that connectivity. We've worked closely with Councillor Brockington to get the Papudo put in near Walkley Station. At every opportunity, we try to find a solution to put something in place. There still remains some work, and we know that there's a few locations near the stations that require continued attention, and we will continue to place attention on those lines as we go forward.
I appreciate that. Waiting for that. We'll be very happy when the Woodruff pedestrian bridge, of course, is finished. I'm hoping on that soon. But like the Queensview station didn't include cyclists. It's going to make cyclists take elevators. There's still some work to be done in terms of the encouraging connectivity to the stations. But yes, and very well that we need to continue to work with the NCC. I've been saying it for years now, on clearing pathways, especially as we have transit-oriented development that is projected for these areas that are relying on these pathways. It's hard to make a promise that they can get to stations when we have no agreements on winter clearing or priority of pathways. So I appreciate the work on that. Thank you.
Okay, merci. René, avant d'aller aux questions au sujet.
Renee, before we talk about, before we ask our questions on the project, do you have any final points you'd like to make? Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I would ask another colleague to join us because at the next Transit Commission will be presenting the marketing plan for the Trillium line. And in reaction to Councillor Leaper's question, I think it would be worth actually giving you a heads up about that if you allow. No, that's fine. Let's do that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning. Just to let you know, as a part of the launch of the Trillium project, we are developing we call it a marketing and readiness project. We really do consider it a communications initiative more than a marketing initiative, because we believe it's going to support customers with the information that they need to navigate our expanded system safely and confidently. We've built it into our new commitment on public trust by improving communications with customers and residents. It's a multi-year project that will inform and prepare residents and generate positive interest for the launch of Line 2. We're hoping that we'll have multiple phased launches that will be tailored to each geographic area across the city. And it'll make sure that our decisions that we make with respect to communicating to our customers are data-driven and responsive. So they're being built on best practices around the world with respect to communicating to customers and to residents. And we're really hoping that the objectives for it will be to support our customers and our residents to build trust in OC Transpo by creating high quality, accurate and user-friendly products, and ultimately to increase ridership by informing and engaging residents, visitors, stakeholders about the new services that were being offered. So that's just a little bit of a highlight of what you'll see at TC. We'll be bringing that a little bit forward with a great deal more information. The report for this will go live tomorrow.
Thank you for that. I don't see any questions on that. So Renee and Michael, if you could just give us a brief high-level update in terms of the project, which is driving all the work that you're doing here today. And you did touch on slide 53, some of the additional kind of oversight and reports that will be coming forward and the information that we'll be sharing with the public and city councilors. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Before moving the mic to Michael, I would like to say that there is something that we have to take in consideration before to give a final date. We have a trigger that we absolutely need. We need to be able to run trains from Bayview to Limebank. And this trigger, we should be very, very close in August. So when we'll come back in September through the LRT subcommittee, we should be able, if we succeed on that trigger, we should be able to commit on a firm date. What is very, very important to know as well is there is no way that we will launch the trains if they're not ready. And we have already committed to run parallel service. Like the bus service will run until April 2024. So there is no rush to move forward with a system which is not ready. So this is very, very firm as a commitment. And now I'll ask Michael to very quickly express himself about where we are exactly.
Thank you, Renee. So in terms of outstanding work, we're still at a point where we were, based on the last update, you know, that final little segment, there's about a few hundred meters of track at Hunt Club Road that needs to be completed. So they're getting closer. They were waterproofing the deck the other week. So there's things like that. We're trying to fill in the gaps, complete the works. As Renee said, we're still looking to that August timeline to basically get to a point where trains can run from Bayview all the way to Limebank. We saw recently a train go to the airport station, which was very exciting. We saw a train go to Limebank station. So the next, to complete the trifecta, we need to get that train to Bayview and then really get the system and the maturity of the system to the point where it's not just a train to Bayview, but it's a set of trains to Bayview where we can then hand over to training and say, now the system's ready and mature enough for you to start running trains back and forth, build up the training hours, demonstrate over August and September the reliability of the system to give us comfort that when we start trial running, that it will be successful. So I've always tried to advocate for using August and September as the time to really calibrate how is the system performing? Is it doing what we needed? Are the pieces in place? Is the reliability there to give us confidence to go into trial running? And then at that point, achieve handover, give some of the other groups of the city an opportunity to use the system for the familiarization exercises that we spoke about today. And then at that point, select a timeline for opening the system to the public.
Okay, Councilor Rockington for a question.
Thanks, Chair. And just respecting sort of high level questions, the major reasons for the Trillium Line expansion being delayed from a construction perspective were the three bridges in particular in River Ward, the Rideau River Bridge, the bridge that spans the Via Rail track, Transit Way, Sawmill Creek, and Hunt Club Road. So at high level, where are we with these bridges? You've run, I think I heard you say, to the south end, so you've gone over the Hunt Club Bridge, but are these bridges in good shape? Are they just finishing aesthetic type of tasks, or are there any major issues with any of these three bridges that you could mention today?
So in terms of the three bridges, Rideau River Rail Bridge, they're basically just down to aesthetics. There's a handrail that needs to be put up. Elwood, the bridge that went over the via grade separation. Again, I think they were just putting the final touches on that bridge, but they should be in a position to take a train over it very shortly. Hunt Club, you can't get over that because there was an existing rail bridge that we were using. And so it's the second track, which is still outstanding. And that's scheduled to be, should be in July sometime when we have track going over that bridge. So we're in a much better place in terms of we're out of the ground. It's in the contractor's control. Whereas I would say 2 years ago, things like Elwood Diamond, it was still, they were uncovering utilities and running into geotechnical issues. Even Rideau River Rail Bridge, they're running into issues with the piers. So we're past that now, and we're onto the finishing works on those bridges. So we're in a much better place.
Thank you very much. The report recommendation is that the Light Rail Subcommittee receive this report for information. Is that received? Received. Thank you again to all the staff and for the work today and the work that you're doing every day to get us ready and to support the city's objectives on a tremendously important project. There's no in-camera items. There's no notice of motions that I'm aware of. There's no inquiries that I'm aware of. And with that, there's no other business. So we will adjourn with our next meeting scheduled for September, but we'll discuss that going forward. Thank you.